In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Do not be surprised if the world hates you. Catholics march to a different drum from the world, and they shouldn't expect the world to understand or to approve. They should expect the world to not approve. We know that we pass from death to life because we love the brethren. That, in other words, the way of life in the world doesn't look like it, but it's a way of death. It's leading, unless these souls recover the grace of God before they die, these millions and millions of souls, unless they recover the grace of God before they die, they're heading for hell. Do they know it? Yes. Deep down, yes. If you think about it, this life seems very short to govern a whole eternity. Eternity never comes to an end. It's unimaginable. Imagine a blackbird flying from the earth to the moon, taking a peck and sending into outer space a bit of moon dust, and then flying back to earth. And then flying back to the moon again, sending into eternity another bit of moon dust. So that by the end, the blackbird will have pecked away the whole moon. Just imagine. Impossible to imagine, ridiculous, but it's imagination. Eternity hasn't even started. Well, eternity has started, so to speak. But eternity goes on forever. You could make the blackbird pick away every star in the galaxies, every star in the sky. It's still just the beginning of eternity. Eternity goes on forever. It's impossible to get into our heads what eternity is. It's much too big to fit into our little heads. And so we don't realize what an eternal damnation means, what a hell means. Corresponding, of course, what heaven means. If I make it to heaven, I've got an eternity of uninterrupted bliss. It will go on, bliss will go on forever and ever and ever, gazing on the infinite beauty of God, the vision of God, in which beatitude consists. It's the vision by the mind, and then the enjoyment by the will. The will is completely and totally satisfied. That's heaven, for eternity, uninterrupted. Or it's hell, uninterrupted, for eternity, uninterrupted. Difficult thoughts to get into our head, because this life is so short. Everything on this life passes, everything comes to an end. Everything ends. In eternity, nothing ends. It won't fit into our heads. We're passed from death to life. Catholics that can persevere by repenting if they sin, and by not sinning. Catholics have life ahead of them, eternal life ahead of them. And it's really something to live for. It gives a real purpose to every moment of my existence, because every moment of my existence is part of this short life. This life is made up of only moments. Every moment is part of this life, which is going to decide my eternity. That's why every moment is important and precious. Because this life is short to prepare for eternity, but with God it's long enough. And if God cuts us off by a road accident, which His providence knew absolutely all about from eternity, and is part of God's plan for this particular soul, for these particular souls that died in this accident. Our Lord says there was an accident in the Gospel. He said, and the apostles asked Him, were these men that died because that tower collapsed specially guilty? Our Lord said, no, do penance, or you perish likewise. So therefore, do penance is the moral of the story. Do penance is the moral of road accidents, or of any other kind of accidents, mortal accidents. But Catholics have in front of them eternal life, and every moment is given to us by God to deserve heaven. Deserve as far as heaven can be deserved. What God gives us in heaven is far more than we can can possibly deserve during this life. But there is a certain proportion. Some people live their lives in such a way as to deserve, in a certain way, to a certain extent, heaven. Others live their lives in such a way as not to deserve it. This life is a means of deserving, even though heaven is far more than could possibly be deserved. But it's meant for deserving. It's not meant for undeserving. God did not create this world in order to populate hell. He created this world in order to populate heaven. We have passed from death to life because we love the brethren. The sign, our Lord says to his apostles at the Last Supper, the sign by which men are going to recognize you is your love for one another. And that's what people noticed about the first Catholics. They weren't like the rest of the world, more or less hating one another. They did love one another. And Catholics should be recognizable today by their love of their fellow men, as opposed to what is increasing day by day, the hate of fellow men. The world is so closing in on people with its rat race, that it's turning people into rats. And all they want is those two very sharp teeth with which apparently rats can bite steel. The very, very tough teeth, sharp teeth. The poor human beings today in these big cities are learning more and more, less and less to love one another, more and more to hate one another. The Christian love, which used to permeate Western civilization, let's call it, is being replaced by Jewish hate. The Jews are not the real problem. The real problem is Catholics who aren't Catholic enough. And that's all of us. All of us. He who does not love abides in death. Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer. John is, as Americans say, upping the ante. To dislike one's brother, you might say, is not to become a murderer. But to hate one's brother, well, yes, to hate one's brother, as our Lord says. It's one thing to, the Old Testament said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, even if you just desire to harm your neighbor, you are already sinning. So to nourish hate in one's heart for one's fellow human beings, we are absolutely forbidden by our Lord to hate the worst of delinquents and criminals and Jews around us. They may play a major part, the Jews in particular, as instruments of the wrath of God in punishing the world. But the real problem is why God wants to punish the world. That's where the real problem is. Why does God want to punish the world? Because too many people are going to hell. Why are too many people going to hell? Because not enough people are living in the state of grace. Why are not enough people living in the state of grace? Because then they're not Catholics as they should be. And you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him, so that's, of course, it's the way to hell. In this we have come to know what is real love. In this we have come to know our Lord's love. He laid down his life for us. That's the real proof. And we likewise ought to lay down our life for the brethren. And we should be ready to die for our fellow human beings, even the worst of them. That's what our Lord did. He died for this world, as St. Paul says, when we were all sinners, before he redeemed us, before he changed the world around and replaced hate in the streets with love in the streets. Now being again replaced by hate in the streets. Although I was just walking along the pavement here, and there was a couple coming this way, and the little baby threw a baby's dummy out of the pram, and a black man coming the same way as I was picked it up and gave it and signaled to the people. That's a tiny little gesture. It's nothing, but that's what makes love of fellow human beings as opposed to hate. He laid down the life for us, we likewise ought to lay down our life for the brethren. He who has, and then there's another point, he goes from laying down life to money. He who has the goods of this world and sees his brother in need and closes his heart to him, how does the love of God abide in him? My dear children, let us not love in word, neither with the tongue, but in deed and in truth. In other words, actions always speak louder than words. Always true. And then the gospel, at that time Jesus spoke to the Pharisees this parable. A certain man gave a great supper. A certain man is, of course, Almighty God. The great supper is heaven. And he invited many. All of human beings are invited to go to heaven. And all of them are bound to know that. They've got to know it deep down. They may learn from their first education, which is already very corrupt in the West. The little children are being taught about sex change and horrors, unimaginable horrors. And this miseducation of little ones is a dagger in the heart of Our Lady. You may remember the fifth first Sunday of the month has the particular purpose of making reparation to Our Lady. All 5 Saturdays are to make reparation to Our Lady. But the 5th is to make reparation for all those who teach children who teach children to turn away from the Mother of God, who don't tell children about the Mother of God or the love of the Mother of God, and who stop them being her children. She wants to be the mother for every single human being alive. And there are men who are deliberately doing all they can to stop her. Oh, what an eternity they will have. Rather, they should have a millstone around their neck, hung around their neck, and be thrown into the sea than offend against the least of these little ones, says our Lord. And he said this, invited men, he said this at the supper time to tell those about to come, because everything was now ready. And they all with one accord began to excuse themselves. So they don't want to go to heaven. They're too concerned with the things of this life. The first said to him, I bought a farm, I've got to go look after it. Please excuse me. And another said, I bought 5 yoke and oxen, I'm on the way to try them, please excuse me. The third one said, I've married a wife and therefore I cannot come. He didn't need to say, please excuse me. Everyone knows if you marry a wife, that's the end. And the servant returned and reported these things to his master. Then the master of the house was angry because these people are turning down a great gift. All of these people meant for heaven, who basically know that they're meant for heaven, who get offended who are seriously offended if you do something to suggest that they are in any way trash. I mean, you've got a poor beggar on the pavement and you fling down a coin at him out of more or less contempt. He bridles. The contempt is much more interesting to him than the coin. Of course, he may well pick up the coin, but the contempt hurts, and the coin doesn't stop the hurt, doesn't pay for the hurt. The poorest, the most wretched of human beings, and that's what all the modern world is on about: human dignity. We must respect and honour human dignity. Human dignity. These big cities where people commute in and try to think of it as little as possible while they're commuting. And then they spend their day pushing paper in a futile and uninteresting and unfulfilling job, for which they may get paid well. And then they commute out again and they're exhausted, they're bored, they're tired, they're frustrated, and all they can do is flop into an armchair, crack a beer and watch television. What kind of a life is that? The master of the house is angry because souls basically know, they know their dignity, which is why even a poor beggar will react if his dignity is offended by somebody giving him alms. All human beings know their dignity. What does that dignity consist in? What does it rest on? It rests on the fact that all of us are created by God individually, and it was by an individual act of creation that God created the soul, without which the body is lifeless. Parents put together the bodily elements when the child is born dead, maybe because it never did have a soul, or because something happened during the 9 months. Maybe it did have a soul, in which case the child, and if it's born dead, it's gone to limbo. It can't go to heaven because it hasn't got the state of grace. It can't go to hell because it hasn't committed a mortal sin. There must be a third place. Logically, there must be a third place for the souls that have neither committed sin nor been baptized, not even the baptism of blood. So, all souls know that they have a dignity. What is that dignity? It's the dignity of having been created individually by God and being meant for heaven. They may want to go to hell, but they know that they nevertheless have a great dignity, they have a great worth and value. So, it's not as though those invited to heaven don't know that they're invited to heaven. They do know. And they do know that they're threatened with going to hell. But they prefer the goods of this life, they prefer pleasures and riches and power, whatever it may be, to eternal happiness with God in heaven. They prefer this world to the next. And God is angry. They've had enough deep down. If they don't know it because they never heard it, deep down they nevertheless know. Otherwise God couldn't judge souls. If they didn't know, God could not judge them. Every soul is judged, therefore every soul knows. And therefore God is angry with souls that don't want to go to heaven. Go out quickly into the streets, souls that don't want to join the Catholic Church. Souls that scorn the Catholic Church. Scorn his true church. He says, go out quickly into the streets and bring in the poor and the crippled and the blind and the lame. That's you and I. The dumb fits, not fits, but something else. The dumb its, the dumbs of this world. That's you and I. We are the human trash that accepts to go to heaven. That's how it is. It's mysterious. No, it's not all that mysterious. The people that have the goods of this world is lovely and fine. They have holidays, they have beautiful clothes, beautiful houses, beautiful cars. That's what they're interested in. That's what they spend their time and effort and money on. And they don't want to go to heaven. This life is enough. And this life, it's nothing. The goods of this life are nothing compared with the goods of heaven. And there it is. There it is. The servant said, Sir, thy order has been carried out and still there is wrong. Then the master upped the ante again. Go out into the highways and hedges and make them come in, oblige them to come in, force them to come in, so that my house may be filled. God created this earth to populate his heaven, and that's what it's for. That's what it's going to do. Almost against the will of human beings. Not quite, but that's how far the master goes. Practically force them to come. Almost force them to come. For I tell you that none of those who were invited shall taste of my supper. The immediate application for our Lord was obviously that the Jews who were invited, as St. Paul says, he preaches first to the Jews and secondly to the Greeks, or the non-Jews. But he preaches first to the Jews. And our Lord went first to the children of Israel, those who had every means of knowing what the New Testament was and what our Lord meant. With the Old Testament, they had all the means of knowing, but they didn't. They, out of pride, mainly pride, love of this life also, but mainly pride, they wanted to do things their way and not God's way. And so they crucified our Lord. None of those who were invited shall taste of my supper. So the first application is to the Jews. The second application is to Catholics. Catholics in the 1960s had for centuries and centuries all that they needed in order to know what the true religion was, in order to go to heaven. But the churchmen, representing all of these Catholics, floating to the top of these Catholics like oil flows to the top of water, the senior officials, drawn all from the modern world, from originally all priests and bishops and popes were laymen originally, these churchmen drawn from the laity are all agreed, the 2,000 bishops and the 2 popes of Vatican II, they were all agreed that they wanted to change the religion. And so there were a certain number of them, a minority, which voted against these delinquent decrees which the Church, the Council Fathers kept putting together, skillfully designed, disguised as Catholicism, but designed as humanism, a glorification of man as opposed to a glorification of God, and a living for this life as opposed to living for the next life. They all decided that they wanted a farm or oxen or a wife instead of what God wanted for them. And so they changed the Catholic religion. An unbelievable delinquency. And those who had first known, who best knew, a number of them, to disguise a false religion of man, to disguise it as a religion of God, takes some doing. You've got to be clever, you've got to know your theology, you've got to know how to make it look like Catholicism. That's what Vatican II did. And that's why, for instance, Archbishop Lefebvre signed 14 of the 16 decrees. The last 2, Gaudium et Spes and Dignitatis Humani, he did not sign. They were too far gone. But they were at the end of the council, when the modernists were no longer disguising so much what they were up to. But the first 14 decrees he signed, because it was disguised, it was ambiguous, every sentence could have 2 meanings, a humanist meaning and a Catholic meaning. And he assumed that his colleagues, he must have assumed, in order to sign what he signed, he must have assumed that his Catholics really meant the Catholic meaning. And that's how well disguised the criminal that's how well disguised the criminal change of religion was. Because Archbishop Lefebvre had the faith. The actions proved that after the Vatican II, not just his words, but his actions. And there were a minority of Council Fathers who voted against all of the decrees. Even the most crushing majority still had 14 or 15 votes against it. So some of the Council Fathers, some of the 2,000 did not lose their heads, but the mass of them lost their heads. And you and I need to beware, because if the mass of Catholics lost their heads in the 1960s, and if the Society of Pius X and the traditionalists formed by Archbishop Lefebvre to resist this criminal change of religion, if they have fallen for it as well, again with noble exceptions, if they have fallen for the change as well, they who were formed to resist it have still fallen for it. That tells you how dangerous this change of religion is. It tells you how dangerous the modern world is, in which even priests formed to see through the criminal change of Vatican II, then want to go along with it. It's a very, very sad and very serious indication of how dangerous the world around us is, and how easy it is to get sucked into the great movement of apostasy, which is sliding down river just like a raft, a big raft imagine a raft with a band, and a band is big enough to have a band, everybody dancing, coloured lights around, and then there's a terrible sound. Isn't that a waterfall I can hear? No. Step up the band, make more noise with the band, stop people listening. But then it's unmistakable, it's getting clearer and clearer. In the next few years, my dear friends, it's going to get clearer and clearer that we're approaching a Niagara Falls, and this beautiful raft of modern life is going to go straight over the falls and it's going to crash 600 feet down, or however deep the falls are, and the falls are only deep. We came very close, as Vince said a few moments ago, with this attack on Iran. It's madness for the United States to be attacking Iran. What harm has Iran done to the United States? Madness. But I'm afraid it is the Jews driving the United States who want the Third World War. They want the Third World War because they think it's going to give them world power. That's what's driving this madness. They're instruments of the anger of God. And the anger of God will take the form of the Third World War. They will have it in the end. They will get their war because they are implacable. And people don't see through what they're up to. They want domination of the world, which they think is duty. And then, but Donald Trump called off the attack, the counterattack, for a drone being shot down. What is a drone? It's a machine. It's nothing more than a machine. No lives lost shooting down a drone. So it seemed Trump explained to the people, he said, I asked my generals, how many people are going to be killed by this counterattack of our warplanes? Answer, 150 people came back. Answer came back to the generals, 150. And Trump said, 150 deaths for one machine. Sorry, it's not worth it. And he cancelled, at the very last minute, he cancelled the attack. I think the planes were already in the air, and he ordered them back. They obeyed the order. And so that's another trigger for the Third World War, which has been avoided. But the triggers are going to keep coming until one trigger is going to set it off. Unless there are enough people praying. This is a problem with God. It's not just politics, by no means just politics. It's never just politics. All real problems with politics have a relationship with God behind them. Because what this life is about is whether souls are going to heaven or to hell. God created this world to populate heaven. And he will allow the Third World War when more souls will go to heaven by the Third War taking place than will not go to heaven. When that point comes, then he will allow the Third World War. And the suffering will be of a kind apt to make many, many souls now completely distracted by the corruption. Many souls, when the suffering begins, like an atom bomb falling on London, or a hydrogen bomb falling on London, when the suffering begins, a lot of people are going to have to think harder. Why life? What is life about? Who is God? Why am I here? Why am I dying? What is death about? What is life about? At the moment they don't have to think about those things, but when the Third World War starts, that's why Almighty God is going to allow the Third World War. At the point when more people will think, the only way to get any large number of people thinking serious, it will be to let them suffer. In suffering is learning, said the great poet, Greek poet Aeschylus. In suffering is learning. Enter patha and matha. So, my dear friends, pray quietly and sanely that souls see what they're on this earth for, and that they turn to God and go to heaven with the help of Our Lady, with the help of the Rosary, rather than fall into hell. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the